Hi everyone, thanks for watching this video. This is one of my favorite principles in the Bible, the percent of, and it really centers on also one of my favorite stories in the Bible is the widow's two mites. So let me just kind of walk you through like what I mean by this. So first, let's kind of just make sure we remember what this story is about. So I'm going to use I'll use the story from Luke chapter 21 verses 1 through 4. Let me just read it for you. So, and he, Jesus, looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the treasury. And he saw also a certain poor widow putting in two mites. So he said, "Truly I say to you, that this poor widow has put in more than all. For all these, out of their abundance, have put in offerings for God. But she, out of her poverty, put in all the livelihood that she had." So I love this. So there's actually a couple things we're going to focus in on. We're going to focus on the character categories, which is the rich. We have the rich as a character category, and then we have the other character categories, the widow or the poor, but we'll say the widow, specifically the widow. So we have these two character categories, and then a common denominator between both is the money, right? The money so I want to drill into the rich, because we know, okay, the widow, it's very specific. We have details about that. The poor person is the widow, and she gives two mites. We have the rich, but we don't know like what did they give. So what I want to do, I want to be able to kind of compare and contrast these a little bit more. The people listening to Jesus back in that day had the benefit of seeing these individuals. Probably they knew who they were, knew their wealth status and all that other stuff to be able to help them understand like the difference between the rich and the poor widow. Versus us, we don't really have that. So what I want to be able to do is just kind of use some data to extrapolate out and help us be able to get a better idea and understanding that the disciples had when it comes to hearing what Jesus said here about when Jesus says, she has given more than all of them, right? That's really, really powerful. So, okay, I have two slides here I want to show you guys. So this next one, this is focusing on the value of mites and specifically for the rich worker. So what I did, I'll save you all the data. Basically what I did, I looked at a common worker in Israel. What did they make using mites as an example? Because that's what we're given in this passage. So a common worker per day would make about 64 mites a day. Or about per month, if you looked at, they work 6 days a week. Per month would be about 1,500 mites a month. Okay, so that's a common worker. That's good to know. And then when it comes to the rich worker, I did a lot of research, couldn't find anything that was really concrete. So basically did some simple math. Basically in the US, a common worker in Israel, applying it to common worker today is about, in today's US dollars, would be about $36,000. That's what an average worker makes in the US for household income now. So basically, okay, if I multiply it these different factors like 3, 4, 5, etc., what would be a good place? Landed on 4. So basically, someone who makes $36,000 in the US now, if you multiply that times 4, comes out to $144,000 a year, which would put someone, a household, in like the top 10% to top 5%, like right in there. Which again, we could say rich is going to the top 1%, whatever would be fine. But let's just stick with, they're saying they're right in between the top 10% to top 5%. That's what we're going to use. And I like that because it's pretty safe. And it's also because it's very conservative. Because I think people back in that day probably were richer than that, right? But let's just use that as an example. So basically all I did here, I said common worker, multiply it times 4. So for a rich worker, we're saying a day of labor would be about 256 mites. And then a month would be about 6,100 mites a month. Okay, for a rich worker. Makes sense, right? Pretty easy, keeping it simple, again, and also pretty conservative and safe. So then, if we look at it in this passage, the rich person is going to the temple, right? They're giving money. Well, let's just use this as an example. Like a tithe is 10%. That was kind of a requirement. Then also the offering, whatever's on top of the tithe. Let's just say 5%. So in total, let's say they're giving 15% of what they make. Let's say, so it's 921. This is just approximate. The point here is the principle, because you'll see, when you see the next slide, you'll kind of understand, whether it's 900 or 2,000 or even 300, the point's going to kind of really come across. So let me show you what I mean by that. What you'll see here on the next slide, you'll see right here, you're going to see this is the number of mites on the axis, the y-axis here. And so we're taking that 921 mites that the rich worker, we're saying, gave. This is what this black box is. And then down here, this is what the widow gave. Can you see it? You can kind of see that gold line down there. Well, here, let me see if I can zoom in and help you out. Here, let's go zoom. A little bit easier to see, right? That indicates those are the 2 mites that she gave. Why I love this picture, and again, whether it was 300, whether it was 3,000, doesn't matter. The point here is this picture illustrates what Jesus was trying to show and what Jesus was talking about, is that it's the percent of he was talking about. How can Jesus say the widow gave more than the rich? Because when heaven looks down, heaven is looking at the percent of. She gave 100% of what she had. She had 2 mites, she gave 2 mites. Whereas though in aggregate, it looks like the rich gave more, and he did in aggregate. But when it comes to the percent of, he didn't. He gave 15%. It's not bad. But what Jesus wants us to understand is that heaven has the vision, has the ability to see things that we can't see. Heaven sees, and what heaven sees is more important than what we see. And so how that can be so encouraging, how that is so encouraging to me, and how that can be so encouraging to you is though those of you who may be feeling like you aren't giving that much, look at it as a percent of. And though in aggregate, you might be feeling like I'm not giving much, I'm not doing much. Heaven looks at it very differently. Heaven looks at it like, man, as a percent of, you are giving so much. On the other hand, those of you who can give a lot, and it looks like you are giving a lot, and in aggregate it looks that way. But heaven knows that when it comes to a percent of, there is more that could be given. And Jesus isn't condemning in this passage, which is beautiful as well. He is just very focused and super focused on encouraging those that maybe feel like they're not giving as much. But he's saying you are giving more than even the rich. And for the rich, it's an encouragement to really look at how you're giving and to know that though you can fool those on earth, it's heaven is the one that you want to please, and that you cannot fool heaven. And so regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, I hope that you find this as encouraging as I do, as a powerful and eternal principle to encourage us to live our life on this earth. So I hope that, again, that you found this video encouraging, and I will look forward to seeing you in other videos. So thank you for watching.